Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My initial understanding was, wow, this goes pretty late, but from what I gather, everything's a little bit later in Barcelona, so that works okay for me. I slept a good maybe 14 hours yesterday once I finally arrived, so it was good. So welcome. This is a session on Project Browser and how we are working to make Starshot's in-browser feature composition a reality. So my name is Chris Wells. You can find me all over the world at Chris from Redfin, on Drupal.org, on the Drupal.community Mastodon, and all my other socials are on my wimpy little website, chrisfromredfin.dev. And this is Leslie Glynn, my co-conspirator here and co-worker and co-initiative lead at Project Browser. And she's around the world at Leslie G on Drupal.org and on the Drupal community Mastodon as well. And we are like I said, the two co-initiative leads for the Project Browser initiative. We've been doing this a few years now. It's been incredibly rewarding for both of us. So I'll turn it over to Leslie to start and talk about sort of what is Project Browser and kind of what can you do with it today.
Thank you, Chris. Can everybody hear us okay? The microphone's working? Okay, cool. Thank you. So what is Project Browser? Dries introduced this back at, I think, Virtual DrupalCon back in 2021. The Project Browser makes it easy for site builders, who's our target audience, to find and install modules. So basically, it's like an app store where you just go and try to find the things that are going to help you within your website. So what does it do? So basically, if you'd like to try it out, if you just go to the Project Browser project page, because Project Browser is in itself a module, you just go to the project page and there's a big green Try It Now button. Click on that, basically follow all the defaults, and it'll spin up a Drupal 10 site now? 10?
I think still 10.
10? I think still 10. A Drupal 10 site with the Project Browser installed, and you'll be able to check it out for yourself. So that's one thing you should definitely try. Would love feedback and would love everybody to know where it lives.
It's DrupalPod.
Oh yeah, it is DrupalPod that you're spinning up there based on DDEV. All right, so where do you find the Project Browser? So once you spin up your site, right, where is the Project Browser? So there's a couple of different places it could be. The default is it's going to be in the top on the regular extend menu, where you're used to going to, look for modules to install, and then there's a browse tab underneath that. If you're using the new navigation module, which is it's kind of like the Gin theme, it'll be on the left-hand side where you go to extend and then use the browse. So in either case, that's what you want to do, extend and then browse. Now, what I neglected to say was that Project Browser is within your Drupal site. So whatever Drupal site you have, Project Browser will be there. It will be put in core at some point, and it will be within your website. So when I say extend and all that, it's typically what you do from your website. The goal is to not have to go out to Drupal.org to find things that you want, functionality or modules that you want to add, okay? And we'll take all the questions at the end. If anybody has them, save them up. So one of the key things you probably want to know is, well, how does Project Browser filter things? There's, I don't know, Neil's here, 50,000 and some odd projects right now. So how do you, as users, figure out what it is that you want to see? What are you looking for? So if you put in a keyword, like the name of the module or something that you know about the module, it'll use that, and it will, and I'll talk about how it sorts it in a minute, but there's a keyword search you can use. There's a category search that you can use, and basically the category used to be on the left-hand side for those of you who have seen Project Browser demos before or sessions before. We've moved it up to the top with all the other filters, so now categories is in line because user research showed us that no one was seeing the category filter on the left. They didn't realize that it was part of the filters. So you can do keyword search, category, security status. Is it secure? What is the status there? Is it actively maintained? And what is the development status? If you don't select anything, you're new to Drupal, you're just coming in, you want to find certain things. The default filters are that it is secure, that it is actively maintained, that it is in the same version of Drupal that you're running on the website. So it's not going to return Drupal 6 and 7 modules, for instance. If you're running a Drupal 10 site, it's only going to return projects that are compatible with Drupal 10. Okay, so that's important to know. All right, so that's the filters, and then we will get into the categories. So when we started this project a couple of years ago, there was 55 categories, and our user research showed that people had no idea which category. New users, like, how do I know which one of these things I want to sort by? I'm sorry, filter by. So we cut that list down with a lot of community involvement to 19. So if you're a module maintainer, there are now only 19 categories that you can assign to your module, and instead of being able to assign every single one of them so that your module shows up all the time, you can only pick 3. We'd prefer to just have one, the most relevant one, because people want to use this filter to actually find what they're looking for. So all the maintainers that are here, I'll talk about at the end what you can do to fix that up. There is a category help page. There's a link in the slide deck. There's a QR code we're going to show at the end again on the front page for you to get to our slide deck. But there is a help page in documentation that tells you the new categories and what should fit into each one of those categories. How many maintainers are here? Modular maintainers? Okay, so this is important for everybody here to know. Sorting. Yeah, we're currently working on that. Some great people from the DA and other contributors are helping out with that. Right now, the relevance score is used if you put a keyword in. If you don't put a keyword in, I said these filters. If you don't put a keyword in, it's going to filter by the most popular module. So right now, by default, the most popular modules will come back in list of popularity. There's also alphabetical sort right now, A to Z and Z to A, and there's a recently added. Does anybody think, just raise your hand, that people will use alphabetical sorts when looking for modules? No. Good. That's what we thought. You think they will? Okay. All right, and how about recently added? Do you think people want to see modules that are new? All right, yeah? Oh, got a couple of yeses on that, not many. All right, so they're still in flux. We're still deciding on what to do with those sort criteria. All right, so when you come to Project Browser, this is what it's going to look like on the right-hand side there. It's going to have a logo, the name of the module or project, very short description, the categories, how many installs. And then there's a button there that's either going to say add and install if you haven't yet added it to your site, install if it's been added but hasn't yet been enabled or installed, and then installed with an ED if it's already in your site. So you'll know, and you just click on a button, and once Package Manager gets into Core, we can put Project Browser in Core, and it'll automatically install this without going to Compose or anything like that. So it'll automatically do the install for you right into your site. Can you turn that off? Some people in here are probably saying, I don't want my end users installing modules on my site. Yes, you can turn off that functionality. There is a configuration, which I think Chris is going to talk about. And then there's the detail page. So this shows you, the prior page, showed you the snapshot, the little cards. This gives you the details. We're still working on this. If anybody wants to help out, we're at blocked, keeps failing test. Changes were made, and then it broke everything. So we're trying to get this in because this is important for you to have the next set of information from Drupal.org, so you don't have to go out to the other website. You can find this information right within the project browser. So we're working on that, and there will be a link to Drupal.org within this detail page, so you can go out. Like, it's not going to have the issue queue. It's not going to have everything from Drupal.org, but it's going to give people the information they need to make a decision on, is it worth investigating this module further? That's our goal, is to give you a snapshot. All right, and now Chris is going to tell you how all of this works.
This is where we get slightly geekier, a little bit nerdier here. But so what you're seeing in all those screenshots is you're actually seeing a progressively decoupled app that was written using the Svelte JavaScript framework, and that's on the front end. So when you are communicating back and forth to your Drupal site or getting that list of modules, you're making API calls to the Drupal site itself, which has all those endpoints. And then the Drupal site can actually then make calls out to any of a variety of backends. So we have a Svelte framework architecture that's built into the app. And then that's compiled down to a single like bundle.js file, and that's our library for Project Browser. So once the front end makes a call to the back end, your actual Drupal site, now all of the backends that are actually on that side are pluggable. So it uses the plugin system, and you can write your own backend in terms of what modules or projects are available. So there are some example source plugins that are provided. You can write your own. And this is how we added recipes support for Starshot. We implemented a new type of plugin on the back end. And what it does is scan your local code base for recipes that are already available. That, for example, works great for Starshot, works great if you're shipping a version of Drupal that contains your recipes already. But what we would like to do is broaden that or create a different backend eventually, which we'll call out to Drupal.org and have it browsable in the same way that modules are today. If you've been with Project Browser a while or been following us, until we had a live Drupal.org endpoint to query, which only came about in the summer a couple of months ago, we were actually creating a mock database of Drupal.org's projects, and we were calling out and using that for a backend for a while. But recently, in the last couple of months, we've actually switched. So when you are seeing the modules that come back, those are coming back live from a Drupal.org endpoint now. So that's nice and functional. So yeah, and that class is just a project browser source plugin. You can extend that. There's only a few methods that you need to implement, and you can write your own backend. So this becomes super useful. For example, if you're at an institution where there's only, say, 100 allowed modules that you want people to be able to install, you can write your own backend that does that limited list. There have been some people writing a backend that uses the GitLab API and calls out to a custom, like a self-hosted GitLab server, and only the projects that are available on that GitLab server are returned. And so you can lock it down so that they're only installable from there. So a lot of good, powerful things here. And a lot of what we had to do in Starshot was sort of abstract some of that from our initial assumptions that we'd only be installing modules to now each backend plugin can have a type of project that it's installing. And from those projects types, we can determine how we activate that project. For example, we used to just install the module because that's how you turn a module on and you enable it. But with recipes, you apply them, and it's a little bit of a different process. So now each type of project that's browsable has an activator associated with it, and you can determine what happens when you activate a recipe. So this paves the way pretty soon to be able to create a theme browser pretty readily inside of Drupal. So we can browse themes, and then the activation of a theme is pluggable, and we can just turn themes on also through the UI. So that should be coming soon to a project browser near you, we hope. None of that work has been started, and that's a great opportunity for anyone interested in that. That would be a great contribution opportunity. Yeah. And then these are configurable. So once you enable different plugins, by default, the recipes plugin and the Drupal.org JSON API plugin are your defaults. But you can also, for example, we ship with, but it's disabled by default, a way to browse Drupal core modules as well and enable them through the project browser. Someday, it is my hope, I don't know if it'll happen, is to replace the entire module administration screen with project browser. Right now, we can't, for example, remove and uninstall modules through the project browser, only add them. But I think, again, that could be coming someday. One thing to note, I think Leslie mentioned before, right now, if you want to have the ability to install and manipulate your code base, you do need to install the automatic updates module. Well, that's not exactly true. You need to get the automatic updates project in your code base, and you need to turn on package manager. So right now that's a submodule of automatic updates that handles that API layer between your site and Composer. And that, if you were at the Dries note, Dries said that is sort of the next step for Project Browser, is taking just that package manager submodule out of automatic updates and getting that into core by itself. And that will help automatic updates and project browser, and that's sort of our next big step. So in terms of in terms of Drupal CMS, also known as Starshot, Dries did say that we should be starting to use Drupal CMS terminology, which I did right on the slides, but not with my mouth. So if you've seen these before, these are some of the initial wireframes that came for Starshot. And the idea was, the first thing we might want to be able to see is, well, what kinds of sort of, I'm calling them baseline installation templates, pointing out that that is not a real phrase. There is no terminology set yet for what we're calling these things, but there's sort of these high level recipes of like, how do you want your site to work at all? And being able to sort of browse what's there and then apply those high level recipes to your site. That's not in the current MVP for Starshot, but it is something that appeared in the prototypes that we will want to get to someday. And then there's also the ability to provide these sort of smaller bits of functionality that we did see, for example, in today's demo. So this is in the current MVP, and we did see this in terms of in the installer that Dri showed in the demo today. So you can turn on some of these smaller pieces of functionality. I say smaller, but they're still pretty substantial. For example, the SEO tools recipe installs a lot of modules and a lot of configuration. And this is currently not using Project Browser during the installer. And from what I learned just a few short hours ago, that's actually a pretty heavy lift because getting Project Browser to work before the system.module is installed is very tricky. So we may not see this in the installer, but one of the next steps in the installer, which didn't really have a prototype, but if you remember from Dries' demo this morning, you do land on a dashboard when you get to the end of the Starshot installer that's kind of like, here are your next steps. And he showed going up to the shortcuts and clicking Project Browser from there. But what we intend to do is on that dashboard actually present a mini browser with some of the most popular modules there. So, you know, do you want to install Path Auto or CTools and Token are like most popular modules, but they're not things that are very helpful from the get-go. But trying to build in a mini project browser that can live on the dashboard is one of the next steps that we're taking as well. And so that is a lot of how we are working to sort of make this Starshot vision of being able to control your whole site from your site without having to use Composer, know a lot of those tools. That's really what's enabling those power users. Or, oh, do you remember her name from the demo this morning? Was it Susan or Sarah? Sarah. So that sort of in-browser composability is what's going to help Sarah to, you know, not need a developer's help in order to build out a really robust functionality. And then something that we do have today is a sort of non-mini browser version where you can actually scan the local site for recipes that are available and enable and apply those recipes right on your site today. So if you have Drupal 10.3 or higher and install Project Browser, you can apply recipes that are currently exist inside of your code base. So for example, at Redfin, we actually do have an install that is based on recipes, and we can turn on the way that Redfin kind of has an opinion about how we should do events or how we should do accordions. We can browse for those and we can apply them through the project browser on our site today if we wanted to. Unfortunately, our base does not include project browser yet, but that's coming. So back over to Leslie for those of us in the room who are maintainers, and even those of us who are not. There's some pretty cool stuff that we've been doing in the sort of Drupal.org side. So.
Okay, so in terms of content, a lot of the community, we've had a lot of help from designers and a lot of people that are new to Drupal have helped us out in this initiative in terms of updating content. So for those of you, how many people have been to Drupal.org before looking for modules? How many think that's a lot of this stuff is very technical and very difficult to understand? Okay. So our target audience is site builders and those who are new to Drupal. So we're trying to make the cards that I showed you earlier, we're trying to make the information on those cards relevant to the target audience that we have. So what we did was we went and did three things. We added the logo. Here you go. We added a logo. to the top 100. So we took the most popular modules at the time, and the community created logos if the module didn't have it already. It created a short description there, you can see. That's a 200-character short description that answers the questions, what do we want this module to do? What does this module do? So I'm a user that's coming in here. What does the module do? I want to know that. And then we have the categories that are on here as well. So that's basically, but if you're a maintainer, your module might not be one of the most popular ones, but if people filter for it and it comes up, you want it to look nice. You want it to look like this. You know, you want people to be interested in using your module. You spend a lot of time, maintaining the module, so you want it to look good. And as users, people who are going to consume this, you want to be able to understand it. So those 100 modules I talked about, the majority of them have been given to the maintainers in the maintainer issue queue. So you might have seen 1, 2, or 3 issues in your queue, maintainers. Take a look at those. It's pretty easy. Just go to Drupal.org and make their suggested changes. We suggested things that you might like, maybe a logo you might like, short description, but don't feel like we're dictating what you have to do to your project page. You maintain these modules, so just take what we have as a suggestion and remember the requirements. So for instance, the logo, so it's going to be displayed in 3 places, actually. It's going to be displayed in Project Browser, in GitLab, on drupalcode.org, and on the drupal.org project page. So it'll be actually used 3 places. So it's important you place it in the right area, which I'll tell you about in 1 second. So I'm not going to go over too many details, but 512, PNG, less than 10K is what we're aiming for those. Now, we need them close to that to make this look nice. Things like don't include the project name in the description, in the logo. So a lot of people put the project name in the logo, and then it's just right above the project name there, so it's kind of redundant. Same with if you start the project name with views unpublished does ABC, that's redundant and it's wasting your 200 characters. So just little things like that. We will be sending out to all the maintainers. I have to talk to Tim Lennon and see how we're going to deliver this to all the maintainers. Instructions for creating these 3 different components that we need. For the summary, again, 200 characters. As you can see on that example, maybe you can't, but there's an ellipsis at the end, because if you don't put in the 200-character summary, and you're actually going to use the summary field on the project page. So there's a description field there, and that's where you put what the module does. There's actually a summary field there. That's what we're using to get these 200-character description. If you don't put one in, it's going to grab it from your current description. It's going to have ... and it's not going to be helpful to those trying to consume it because it's typically way too technical, that information. So you can add that to the summary field. I neglected to say, let me go back 1 second. For the logo, you want to put it in your code base. So in the regular code base it's going to be on your default branch, and basically it's going to be named logo.png. And again, these instructions will be all sent to you, but you need to name it correctly. You need to put it in the correct place so that it appears in those 3 places I said that it was going to appear in. I know this might be very confusing, a lot of details here. It's just we want you to know that these things will help you, to get your things looking nice in the project browser. And then so I did the summary. Categories, again, you can select 1 to 3 of those 19, and they show up on the card up there. We prefer just 1. There's a lot of confusion about what categories should we use, so we suggested some to you. But again, if you read the whole list of 19 categories and what each one does, then it'll be clearer. So don't just read it and pick the first one and say, oh, I think I fit here. Read them all. Make sure you understand them all. Because you want people, when they search for SEO, for instance, to get back modules that are relevant to SEO and not anything else. All right, and that's all I have. And then Chris is going to take over here.
So I hope you're asking, how can I help? So if that's the case, then I just want to point out how you can do that. Easiest way is on Slack. We have asynchronous meetings every week on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. So that's going to be about 10 p.m. CEST. We do an asynchronous meeting for site builders and for those new to Drupal to help represent that audience, do a lot of UI and UX work. And then the general meeting, which is a little bit more back end, if you are wanting to write code and work directly on issues, that happens at 10 a.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Central European. With that said, these are asynchronous Slack meetings, so they actually stay open for about 24 hours. So we post threads about the topics we're interested in, and we sort of keep that open and take feedback on those issues for a day. So you do not need to be there at 10 p.m. on a European time. You can come the next morning and see what we talked about and chime in and answer questions for about the next day. And then there's also the issue queue for Project Browser. And one thing to point out, we also have a roadmap issue. And that's really what we're focused on for getting into Drupal core. So there are these specific issues that need to be in our MVP before we can go into core. While you're actually here, there are some contribution opportunities here in Barcelona. So if you've not contributed before and you would like to, there is mentored contribution on 27 September, and that happens in room 111. We'll help you understand the issue queue, help you find an issue that's within your comfort zone to work on. That's the first time contributor workshop, but there is always mentored contribution open. So that's if you need some help finding issues and working with a mentor to get that in. And then general contribution is open pretty much every day downstairs just off of the exhibit hall. And I spend a lot of my DrupalCon time there working on Project Browser. And so if you need some help or just want to see how you can help, find me down there and I'd be more than happy to point you in a direction there. Talked about the roadmap. Oh, we're also doing a BOF on Thursday at 10:45 a.m. in the BOF room 2. And I'll be talking a little bit about, or we'll have a discussion about the Svelte front end side of things and dive a little bit deeper in if you want into like how that actually works, or if you just are curious about Svelte and how that works, then happy to talk to you about that at the BOF. And then this is the QR code for the session feedback. So we want to make sure that that's included. Probably should have put it after the questions, but the question slide, but that's okay. Question slide is next anyway, so I'll bump over there, say, are there any questions? If you have any questions for us, there's a microphone there, or you can ask in the app, and James will relay them up to us to be answered. So thanks very much. Anything else you want to say? Oh, sure.
He's going to the front page of the QR code for the slides so you can get all that.
Leaving that up as well, yeah. So I forgot to mention, even though Leslie reminded me right before I stood at this lectern, that QR code is for the slides. So if you want any of the links that were in the slide deck, you can grab those. Oop, back it up. There you go.
Any questions, anybody?
Yeah.
And like you said, we're around all the time, so if you want to come and ask us questions. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Hi there. So I was wondering, you guys made the decision to go to Svelte, but now that there's going to be more React in core UI, are you going to try to move that away, or is there a plan for that?
Yeah, that is a very good question. One that popped into my head about 3 hours ago when that was announced there. So we definitely made a very intentional decision early to use the Svelte framework. For one, we have tried to put React in core a number of years ago for the Drupal admin UI. And it was very difficult. It was met with some hesitation, especially around security. One of the things was, remember what we did with jQuery when we bundled jQuery with core, and then we needed specific versions of jQuery to ship with core, and we would need to do that with React. With Svelte, you kind of only need to, you don't need to commit a particular version of Svelte. Svelte compiles down to vanilla JavaScript, and then you just ship that vanilla JavaScript with your module. So we took that tack as, yeah, now we're going to get this into core. We're going to get a JavaScript framework kind of into core. And then Experience Builder came along, and there was a hard, like, let's innovate. And that team went with React. So it's a little bit of, we might get both, we might not. So we are going to start having some new conversations with the core JavaScript team to see, do we want to support both? Does this make sense? Should we be porting to React? What I can commit to is we are going to do what makes the most sense for the Drupal project. So if they say we want this, keep it how it is, but it's got to be React, we will recode it if that's what's required, because we really want to see this thing succeed and we want it to be the best it can be for Drupal. So we do need to kind of evaluate that ourselves, but yeah, nothing's off the table. Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Hi, thank you for that. It's really interesting. With Starshot and Project Browser, it feels like we're perpetuating the already popular modules. What is there in Project Browser to show new things that might be really cool, or are you totally relying on that people self-publicizing or writing articles? What is there for hey, this is a great new thing, might be better than something that's really out there already?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and one that I ask myself on regular websites we build. Whenever you put a most popular articles block on a newspaper site, well, those keep being popular because it's self-fulfilling. So there's a couple of answers to that, and a lot of them have come from real early ideation. And one of those is, we are sorting by popularity because that is an incredibly powerful quality indicator. New stuff is going to need to grow. So having be able to sort by recently added and see what's kind of new and out there, that's sort of the use case of that sort as a possibility. It's like, hey, what's new and out there? The other is we had always intended to have a way to sort of do a showcase inside of the project browser. So right now, a lot of that vertical space is taken up by messages that like, project browser is a prototype. We need your feedback. This isn't a live endpoint, even though it is now. So one idea is being able to have a showcase and some kind of news at the top of Project Browser to be able to say like, hey, have you heard about, the new event kit? Or, Smart Date did get very popular very fast, but prior to that, in Drupal 8, 9, 10, there wasn't great date stuff because the stuff from 7 hadn't been ported. So that's our main intent, and that'll probably go in sort of after Project Browser goes into core. But that's the intent, is we do want to make the Project Browser extensible if we can. Yeah, I'll follow up.
Make a suggestion.
Sure.
You must be able to tell from Drupal.org which projects are growing quickly. It's the speed of adoption. Perhaps you could use that as a metric for, here's things that seem to be, popular quickly.
Yeah, we do know number of downloads. I don't know if we know them. Neil has already taken off, but whether or not those downloads are happening at a particular time, but that would be a good, here's a hot new module, right? Even if it's, 100 downloads, but those 100 downloads happen in the last week, that would be a good thing to showcase. Oh, yeah, we do intend to make the project browser extensible so that we can inject those sorts of things. Yeah, another.
So I just wanted to say, for ideas like this, please add an issue. Search our issue queue and see if there's one there, and if they're not, put that there. That way it gets into our queue, gets into our roadmap, and it's things that we will consider as we go. So anybody can create issues. If you haven't created an issue before, it's very easy. Just go in there and say, this is what I think I need, and we'll take those into consideration at some point. Brian.
This is not my question, but now that I know that you can create a plugin for it, I'm going to create a plugin for the least popular module so people can find mine.
You can do it. Just find the worst 200, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And I can give you any more bad ideas. But no, my questions were, a lot of them were around recipes in Project Browser, because also 3 hours ago I was surprised to see that. You answered a lot of those questions, which was awesome. And this might be more of a recipes thing, but beyond the local installs, are there plans for how recipes are going to be distributed in the future, or is that outside of your purview?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am tangential to it, but I am aware. So as of right now, and we're still determining whether or not this is the best course of action, but right now we're trying to figure out if recipes is there's any reason why they can't fit into a Drupal general project. So for those of you that aren't aware, there are different node types on Drupal.org. There is a project module node type for modules. There is a project theme node type, and there's a project general or general project node type. And a lot of the general projects came about actually from JavaScript framework stuff, like when we took and made Drupal.once into its own general project. So as of right now, we're thinking recipes are going to be a specific subtype of general project. That might have a taxonomy or something so that we can filter and say, show me all the recipes and get those from Drupal.org. Still a little bit unsure if the general project will be adequate or if we need to enhance it in some way. We're unsure if recipes will need things like composer version constraints, because maybe a recipe won't apply unless you have a particular version of a module, things like that. So still TBD, but the ultimate hope is that recipes will be published and available on Drupal.org, and we'll use that as an endpoint to fetch them. But again, nothing's off the table as of right now. Good.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all right. Nah, we don't need to bother too much about it.
Neil, I was just saying, if you wanted to weigh in on that at all, Drupal.org, how recipes are going to go in there, you're welcome to. If he covered it? All right. All right. Any other questions? Anything else? Maintainers, so you're going to help us out, fix your modules, put the stuff in Drupal.org. I will make sure we send something out to the maintainers channel or email. I got to talk to Tim Lennon, who's not here, and see which is the best way to get you the information on what we need and where to put it. You know, for instance, the summary field or the logo PNG in your root folder, that kind of stuff. We'll get you that information, but if you could start thinking about that. And like I said, the community can help. They help with the first 100. So if you want a logo, for instance, and you're not a designer, you don't have anybody around with design skills, if you just tag it with Project Browser Initiative Design or Project Browser Logo and Designer, those will be picked up by the community, and somebody that can design a logo for you will design a logo for you. So don't feel like maintainers, you have to do all that work yourself. There's plenty of people in the community that can help you. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.